Welcome into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. Joey Van Zummeren joined by Michael Sampson, Chase James, two of our other basketball reporters here on the site to talk everything about Mizzou's basketball offseason thus far, adding three guys to the transfer portal: Javon Porter, forward from Loyola Marymount, Sebastian Mack today from UCLA at guard, and then finally over the weekend, Oklahoma center Luke Northweather. So some exciting additions there. No big splashes yet that a lot of people were expecting from Dennis Gates in Missouri. They still got two roster spots open, though. Still some time to make some movement, shake some things up there. So excited to talk about it all today. We'll start just, Chase, what have your general thoughts been on this transfer class?
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. It's not amazing right now. It's definitely, I think people were hoping for a hotter start to it. I mean, there's a lot of time. It takes time to get guys. But, I mean, overall, Javon Porter, I thought, was a fine addition. If you compare that to losing Aiden Shaw, I feel like it's a pretty even replacement. I actually credit Quentin with comparing Javon Porter to Trip Pierce as a older and a little bit worse version. And I can get behind that comparison. Northweather's the one I'm not too keen on. I get it. I definitely don't think he is the answer at center right now. I think with one of those two roster spots is definitely something they can look into. Can space the floor, but I don't think he's the traditional big man that you kind of want to replace like Josh Gray with. And then I woke up late to the Sebastian Mack news. Probably their best addition yet. I mean, they need guard play. Absolutely. And I think he will definitely be a good option next year, probably starting alongside Anthony Robinson. So
right.
Nothing incredible right now, but there's definitely some things to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, what have your thoughts been on this group?
Yeah, no major disagreements for me. I'm so happy we can finally talk about this because there's a lot of people wanting those big splashes and people expecting Dennis Gates and his staff to land 6 starting caliber players, and that's not always how it works. And we know that Dennis Gates loves his depth. So when you think about a guy like Javon Porter and then Aiden Shaw leaves, those just really cancel out. The minutes will probably be similar. I think what Porter brings to the table, given Missouri's offense, honestly might be, a bit of a positive with the shooting and the court spacing ability. Obviously, you lose some athleticism there, but I don't think that's a negative addition. Again, it's just not exciting. And the same thing with Northweather. That one was completely out of left field for me. I've been able to keep up and not be surprised with anything that's happened, except for that. I wasn't expecting that, and I really didn't even know he had entered the transfer portal. But that being said, he's not a bad addition. And again, it's going to be a depth piece. He is not Missouri's starting center, at least I would think, for next year. But like Chase said, he can space the floor. His shooting volume went up. And his shooting numbers went up for Oklahoma this year as well. So that's a positive. Probably not the best defender, but you can work around that. And again, Mack, knowing who Missouri had reached out to and who was still available on their board, this was outside of the big name and Jaden Quaintance, Sebastian Mack was probably the highest profile target that Missouri still had available on the board, really, outside of, I guess, Kyan Evans as well. And it made sense, too, with how he plays. I actually saw a Twitter comparison to Tony Perkins, and role-wise, I think that makes a lot of sense. I know that Perkins was able to handle the ball a lot and kind of step in and play point guard a little bit. I'm not too sure if Mack can do the same thing, but I do know that they're bigger physical guards. Mack is a great defender, so like Chase said, that's going to pair up well with Anthony Robinson. This is definitely a higher profile addition that I would really hope fans aren't getting greedy, because this is an exciting, like I said, exciting addition. He will start unless there's some, other crazy ones.
Yeah, I mean, Mack was a top 100 recruit just out of high school two recruiting classes ago. And we're going to dive in deeper to each of these three guys here, and then also the main one that they're losing to the portal, Marcus Allen, in a bit. But I wanted to throw out this to you guys, and whoever feels passionate about this, because I'm sure at least one of you do, of the slow moving part of this early transfer portal for Missouri. It seems like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in general the additions this year are kind of lagging behind for every school, but especially Missouri, it seems it definitely took some time. Before this Sunday, they only had one commit, and that was Porter, and there's obviously the family connection there, hometown connection there as well. And so I don't think there's anything there other than just, whatever recruiting processes are going through, and can be just a case-by-case visit. And they still got visits scheduled with some guys in the latter half of this week still. But there was an interesting point I saw brought up of just, we've obviously talked a lot of times about Dennis Gates' ability as a recruiter, but the amount of guys he plays, is there enough playing time to go around to be an alluring option? Because Dennis Gates and his rotations have been such a conversation around Missouri basketball for each of his past 3 seasons there. And at the end of the day, I think if you're good enough, you're going to play your fair share of minutes, and he's getting some depth pieces in there as well. But what are your guys' kind of overall thoughts on that? Like, ultimately, like, he can play as many guys as he wants, but ultimately there's only so many minutes that can go around.
I want to speak on the first thing you said really quick with, the slow moving nature of the transfer portal. I think the important thing is fit. And obviously there are some high profile names that Missouri reached out to right away. Like the one that, kind of jumps out at me first is Kwamari Peterson. You guys know I was confident that, that was something that could happen. Obviously it didn't. And he was a good fit. So that's one that stings. But with names like Keyshawn Hall from Central Florida, Nick Graves from Charlotte, like additions like that, some of them just didn't quite, make sense. And the Keyshawn Hall is a guy who needs the ball in his hand all the time, that sort of thing. That doesn't strike me as a player that Missouri really wants / needs. I think their offense is prided on being unselfish, and if one guy's not going to do his thing, the other guys are going to do their thing. So I think a lot of it is fit and finding the right guys. So I think that kind of plays into the slow moving nature. But I think there is some, there's 2 years, obviously out of the 3 years, we've everyone knows the narrative of 2 good, 1 bad. But I don't think the deep rotations has really hurt them at all, as long as they have the guys that fit their system. And, the season that didn't go too well, where they didn't win an SEC game, I think you can make the argument that some of the depth guys, weren't talented enough or weren't good fits. You look at the 2 years that went better, they were good fits and they were much more talented. So I think that plays a bit into it as well. It's just really a fit thing. And I guess I respect what Gates and his staff are doing, because they are being extremely, extremely patient in wanting to get guys that fit their system. And it's not exciting. It's not necessarily flashy. I think maybe Missouri sports fans get a little, ready to jump the gun when especially you have like Eli Drinkwitz going out and getting these big name guys in the transfer portal on the football side of things. I think maybe that gets people really excited, but different philosophies there and how they hunt players. And Gates just really, really, really wants guys that are going to fit his system and are willing to, take a back seat when they have to, and then take a step forward when that needs to happen as well.
Yeah, and the whole depth conversation you were talking about, I mean, that was a big point of contention with Drake and Mizzou, because Ben McCollum has 9 guys, only really plays 5, 6. And, you can argue that depth was a part of it. I don't really know if that was a part of the win. I think the depth was a big part of why Mizzou was so successful for most of the season. Looking at the roster now for next year, I mean, it's weird because you have a lot of freshmen that are going to be sophomores that I think are going to need more minutes to develop. Burns is actually going to be available. I guess you're going to want Marshall to play more than he did last year. Tio looks to be like, we thought he might be a starter before Mac. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore, but I think he's going to be probably the sixth man or borderline sixth man next year. Honor Boateng, like the list goes on. So I think you could still convince guys to come here and get big roles because, you look at the starting lineup for next year, like Jacob Cruz might be the starting small forward right now. And I mean, he does space the floor, but you definitely can get guys in the pool right now that are definitely a starter capable. And obviously a center too. So I don't know. I don't think depth is an issue for Missouri, but they definitely are going to need it next year for sure.
Yeah, a lot of things to hit on there. First off, as far as Drake's depth, I loved the quote from Ben McCollum after the game against Missouri, where he said, "Depth for me, it's one of the most overrated things." What does depth mean? That you could play 10 guys and then 5 guys don't get in rhythm? So I have no strong opinion about it, really. And I don't think there is one right way to do it. But I love that answer. And obviously, Ben McCollum's going to have a biased view of it just because of the amount of players you're going to be able to get to a school like Drake. And he was very successful with that method. As far as, yeah, I mean, I would agree with the two of you. I think I can understand why. I mean, Twitter fans are always having something to say about that, and I can understand why they might think that has something to do with it. But again, at the end of the day, if you're good enough to play, you're going to get the minutes you deserve here. So that's that. As far as the freshmen, the rising sophomores, that's the next thing I wanted to talk about because that's what's been on my mind with this transfer portal class. Is like, I mean, as you were kind of talking about, Chase, too, like there's still time, like people are their perception of this class is being really colored by the first 2 editions. There's still time for them and space for them to get that, like by the end of this transfer portal window, to have a pretty incredible class. Like there's still time for that to end up happening. But the main thing that's been on my mind is just the importance that these rising sophomores are going to play in this upcoming year. And no matter who they add with that, I think this is a year where their development is going to be crucial to this team. I mean, we saw that with Anthony Robinson and Trent Pierce this past year, but then also the development of the guys who had transferred the year before with Caleb Grill, with Tamar Bates as well, and how they developed. And so I think Mark Mitchell is going to be a part of that, his development, and how they can carry those guys along to be a part of this next bridge here. And on the note, I mean, Michael, you're a recruiting guy. Do you think, I mean, they've lost Marcus Allen in this class now, but do you feel like a 5-man freshman class, is that kind of more than the average for basketball now?
I mean, yeah, and you can, again, I don't want to draw the football comparison too much, but like you see that those freshman classes for both big name sports are starting to decrease because, what happens is what's happening with Missouri, right? Marcus Allen just, he doesn't think he has a role. He wants to go play more. I'm not going to speculate, but if they bring in another player at a certain position, it would be surprising to see another one of those freshmen transfer out. So there's just no reason to bring in 5 or 6 now if 3 of them are going to transfer within 2 or 3 years. So having a 2-man freshman class like this one incoming just makes a lot more sense when it comes to roster flexibility because, you can also focus your development more on those 2 guys, especially in Missouri's case when Rowe and Randall aren't the 2 highest rated guys, especially now, you can focus your development on them and not have to expect them to, play right away. I think it's a fair bet to say with the whole depth conversation that they probably will see some minutes. And I kind of like to think that Randall does a similar, role to what Marcus Allen does. But yes, roundabout way of answering your question that, 5 is a lot. And I would be shocked if it ever gets that high ever again, even with, your big, recruiting powerhouses like a Duke, a Kentucky, those teams, even those classes are, they used to be 6, 5 to 6. Now you're seeing them drop down to 3 or 4, or sometimes even less. So, emphasis on the transfer portal is obviously huge, especially when, those big name freshmen, like a guy like Marcus Allen is going to continue to play. I would imagine at the Power 5 level, he's a very good player. He's going to probably transfer to another Power 5 school. So there's just no reason anymore to bring in 5-man freshman classes when you can do it in the transfer portal. And, there's a guy who's played 2 or 3 seasons and has college experience. So to answer your question in a very long roundabout way, yes, those classes are, getting smaller and smaller.
I think it's interesting too, and how you only have so much money to go around, how that factors into this. I'm sure that was an expensive freshman class, not only for just the amount of players they had, but I mean, all those guys were pretty, no 5-star in there, but some pretty highly touted recruits in that class. So then obviously, like without open reporting, because NIL isn't supposed to be used to like lure, it's not supposed to be used as a recruiting tool according to the NCAA, since they can't report that and all of the messiness there. And I don't know what that looks like from year to year, and how the adjustments, how much room they can even adjust for that, what that even looks like. So again, but I would imagine the money they have is set aside for that class is playing into what they're able to do in this transfer portal window. So I'm not going to turn this into an NIL transfer portal conversation that they're having that in the nation's capital today. But it's just a interesting thing to follow, that its arms stretch everywhere.
To add one more thing, obviously you have guys like, I'm going to throw Jaden Quinton's name out there because he seems to be a topic of conversation. I mean, he is, just full transparency, going to be an expensive transfer addition for whoever, whatever team adds him. So it's going to be expensive if it's Missouri, it's going to be expensive. If it's Kentucky, like, it doesn't really make a difference. And that's when having that money set aside, like you said, is really important. And it just kind of devalues, the purpose of adding a high number of freshmen when you could get a player who might be able to do the same thing, but they have no college experience and they need to grow into their body a little bit. Or you can pay a little bit more money, add Jaden Quinton, who could go to the NBA in a year and is a proven Power 5 guy. So I guess it's kind of sad for the recruiting fans like me, but it is the truth.
Yeah, I mean, the NBA draft definitely factors into this too. I mean, what were you going to say, Chase?
I was going to jump in about like NIL and the specific like transfer class so far. Like, they probably haven't spent a ton of money yet, right? Like, I mean, we have no idea, but I mean, I've been talking about Quaidance, how I want them to go after him. I don't know how realistic it is, but I think you have 2 roster spots left. I still think they should go after it. And if it takes a lot of money, I still think he's probably 1 or 2 best available in the transfer portal. So I still think they should try. And they need a center still. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Quaidance, again, what I was saying about the NBA draft, it's interesting because the NFL is really just starting to see the impacts of extra eligibility, NIL, and all of that stuff. And it's really impacting the juniors who are good enough to be selected in the first round of the NFL draft are just declaring, but presumably, besides the Arch Mannings of college football, like, there's very few where an NFL contract is going to be cheaper than their NIL value. But rounds 3, 4, I mean, anything past round 2, really, I think in the NFL, you're going to see certain guys. Well, they already have guys choosing to stay in college because it's more beneficial money-wise. And so NBA-wise, it's going to be interesting. Like Caleb Grill had talked about it in a press conference during the season of how they're starting to see guys stay in college longer. It makes sense, obviously. But then also you have to factor that into your checkbook and how you're building your team for an investment like Quaidance. Do you have the other pieces in place to be able to go all in? Because if you're signing Quaidance for a 1-year rental, because he's probably going to be very high pick in the NBA draft, do you have the team around him to make that worth it? So a lot of interesting stuff. So, I mean, on that note, like Quaidance, I think we've talked enough about him around as who he is as a player just throughout this past week. but I'll open up to both of you of just where do you feel this team is at right now? Do you think they are in a space where they should make aggressive moves like that in the transfer portal?
I mean, it's kind of a rocky road. You know, Quaintance is a unique and intriguing option, but also kind of scary because you know he had a good year for Arizona State, like a good year, but it wasn't great, it wasn't outstanding, and he is still developing. So he's fun and he's flashy, and it's gonna look like a super exciting move, but he was a 9-8 guy for Arizona State, and maybe that's just what he is. And again, the fit and the personality, matter. I don't know much about how we fit in with Arizona State. I know that he's a great player and has all the tools to be a great NBA player, but it just depends on like how Gates and his staff really view it. I mean, if they, maybe they don't think he'll be great in the locker room or too ball centric or something like that. So it just depends, because obviously it would be a ton of fun to see him play, and like we've been talking about, the odds of him just based on his defensive skills, which I think is probably the most intriguing thing about him. He's a 6'9", but he can block shots like he's 7'2". I mean, that's unusual. But the fit matters. How he's getting, locker room presence matters. So, I mean, in general, be aggressive, right? And you would like to think that there are still 15 days left of the transfer portal being open, something like that. So I guess maybe the I would like to think that people aren't done transferring. So not to say that there's going to be better options than Quaintance, because obviously we don't really have much idea of knowing that, but being aggressive, but for the players that you need and that fit your team well, which I guess is what they've been doing so far. Maybe they know somebody who's going to enter, or they're waiting for somebody to commit. But yeah, I mean, it can't hurt to be aggressive, but they are not going to go after somebody like Quaintance, just because he's an NBA draft guy. Like, he really has to be a right fit for the team.
I agree with that. And it is kind of hard to weigh how good Mizzou is going to be next year, because right now, I mean, we could talk about this. I don't think they're going to be as good as this year, just right now, because they're relying on a lot of development, and I don't think the transfer portal ads right now are stacking up at all compared to last year. So, I mean, I still think they're going to be a competitive team, but with these last two spots, they really need to go after a guy that's going to make a high level impact, whether it's Quaintance at center or even a guard that is a trustworthy scorer and 3-point threat. They need to add somebody like that. But I do think it is questionable if Quaintance is necessary for where they're at right now. And for him, if he's basically going to play a 1 year and go to the draft, projected, I think, top 5-ish in 2026. I don't know if he looks at Mizzou and says that's going to help me. Maybe, but I'm not sure. Depends on who else is going after him. A lot of programs.
Right. Yeah, I definitely hear you there. So it's going to be interesting this whole offseason. And I mean, yeah, we might not have a great idea. I mean, again, depending on who they add in these last few weeks of the portal, we might not have a great idea of what this team really is until we actually see them on the court. And even non-con might teach us more than usual just by getting to see those younger guys get playing time, see where they improved from last year. So I think Dennis Gates has a lot riding on this upcoming season. I mean, he obviously did in year 3, but this is really he's going to if he's going to be a coach of a program that prioritizes development and retention, then this is a pretty great year to be able to prove that. So interested to see that. I mean, talking about retention development, let's end it off here by talking about Marcus Allen. And then also, I mean, we were talking a little bit about the freshmen who are going to make an impact next year. I think the one that sticks out the most to me is Hunter Boateng, highest rated recruit in that class. So both of you guys, what are your thoughts on what they're losing Marcus Allen, and then kind of who is the freshman you think will have the biggest impact next year?
Again, I mean, Marcus Allen is a big loss, and he showed flashes of, being a really solid role player. I think that's the key word. It's not like you're losing a key, like a ride or die guy that's going to completely affect the team. He showed flashes. And again, I think Nicholas Randle does a lot of similar things to what Marcus Allen does. So based on what you're losing versus what you're gaining, I mean, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't look into the future, but like on paper right now, it seems like a wash. Obviously, Marcus Allen didn't have the biggest offensive impact. He was kind of in there to be a physical defensive option and a good rebounder as well, and that's really what Nicholas Randle does. Kind of thrives around the basket, maybe not as downhill as Marcus Allen is or was, I guess. So I mean, I guess it's kind of a wash. They're both good defenders as well, and I don't know. Again, we don't know how the staff views Nicholas Randle, but again, they were rated pretty differently. Marcus Allen was a top 200 4-star. Nicholas Randle is not. So interesting to see that. And then I agree with you on your take on Onor Boateng, Joey. I think we didn't get to see a ton of him this last season, which in hindsight, it makes sense based on who they had on the roster. But I think going into this last season, obviously you assume he's going to be the guy that plays the most. And he started for a lot of games in the first half of the season, which is easy to forget about. He did have some opportunity. It's not like he was not given any chance at all. It's also really important that he hasn't transferred yet. I guess things can happen. But the fact that he played a minor role and hasn't left yet is a really, really good sign for Dennis Gates and Onor Boateng and the rest of the freshman class. But based on who's on the roster right now and where the holes are going to be, it looks like he's going to be a very important player. So I agree with you, Joey. But how things look right now, and I would imagine they add another wing or two in the transfer portal. They need to, but with how things look right now, and even regardless who they do end up adding, I think the year 1 to year 2 jump for Boateng is going to be important, and it looks like he's going to have a role for himself as of now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on Allen. I was originally really surprised that it was him. I didn't think they were going to lose anyone, but especially him playing the most. But again, it is kind of a somewhat replaceable skill set. They'll work around it. And as far as what freshman I think is going to be most exciting, I mean, I'm very excited for Boateng as well. I was a little disappointed when he did completely fall out of the rotation after non-con. But this year he's going to have a much bigger role. But I'll be different. I'm so excited to see Trent Burns play. I don't know how.
Is it just because you're a Thunder fan for the Trimby?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. No, but I don't know. Just with the center position the way it is, I think the whole idea of him it could be really strong. I don't know how much he's going to play after not playing an entire year, but he's been with the program. That always helps. If you want to relate to Thunder, I mean, Chet spent a whole year with the Thunder, being on that roster. That helps you in the next year. So I don't know, but I am very excited to see him play and see, how he fits in.
I'm gonna add one thing, with Burns and Peyton Marshall. That again, I'm not. You don't want to speculate about anything, obviously, but if hypothetically Missouri does add Jaden Quaintance to play the center spot, would make sense for one of those two guys to leave. Again, we don't know what that looks like, who that would be. But that's where the whole retention thing versus additions, that's when Dennis Gates and his staff really have to evaluate what they want and who they're really to take a gamble on, because I think Jaden Quaintance is as much of a gamble as investing more development and playing time into Trent Burns is, not just because of his lack of experience, but obviously, he's kind of a new mold / generation of centers that are, more skilled than the average guy, but their bodies really take a lot of time to develop. So that's going to be an interesting conversation if that happens. Again, don't want to, speculate, but it would make sense that if they do add Jaden Quaintance, that we might see one of those two guys leave.
Yeah, I mean, with Burns, I'd imagine what sucks the most about his injury this year was obviously, not being able to get playing time and just be able to test him out in that way, but also just the time he missed then and development in the gym. So we'll see what that looks like for next year. Before we head out, I have a question for Michael, and then we'll round it out with national championship predictions. Although this is going to be uploaded on Tuesday, so we will know, our viewers will know by the time it comes out. But Michael J.J. Andrews, the 4-star prospect, announcing his commitment on May 15th. He's down to Missouri, Arkansas, Marquette, Oklahoma, and LSU. What's the quick synopsis on him?
Yeah, great player, talented wing. Similar a little bit to Honor Boateng. Physical, 2/3. Needs a little bit more of that offensive development, I think, when it comes to his jump shot and being able to create jump shots off the dribble and that sort of thing. But he's a good defender, good rebounder. He's 6'6", 220. So for a junior to be senior in high school, that's an impressive build. As far as who's going to get him, I couldn't tell you. It kind of seems like Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma are kind of the three teams. Obviously, that's pretty close to home. But he's been to Missouri multiple times. He's also been to those other schools multiple times. I guess I kind of default to, there are three pretty even-ish basketball programs, and all are willing to fork out the money. So if you want to look at which team has an advantage, you kind of lean towards Arkansas, just because, I guess I should have mentioned, he's from Little Rock. That's an important thing. So I guess because of that, you can kind of give Arkansas the edge. But not really anything from me about, where he's leaning. I guess we'll have to wait another month or so to figure that out. But would be a great addition. Probably would be the staple of that class. So you cross your fingers and hope that they can get it done. But it is nice to see that they did land in that final list of schools. I know that there's been a lot of interest there for like the whole season, and that, again, Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma are kind of three programs that have been at the top of his list.
All right. National championship tonight. Florida is 1.5 point favorites. I think the SEC, it's just been funny to watch the moments where the SEC gets a lot of great commercial marketing and then collapses. So obviously basketball held up this year in the tournament. Unlike football, there's still a little bit of upsets over some SEC teams as we got closer to the end here. But I'm not anti-SEC, but I'll go with Houston to pull off a minor upset according to Vegas. What do y'all got?
I'm really bummed out because I had a lot riding on Duke, and Duke failed me. But for this game, I'm going to go Florida, just because of the SEC. I feel like with this year, the conference being as strong as it is, like, someone's got to do it. So I'm going to give it to Florida.
Yeah, I think I've told you guys this multiple times. You look back to, beginning part of the SEC season. I don't know, with how Florida is playing right now and how Missouri ended their season, that's a head scratcher. So I'm going to go. I think Florida has looked like the best team. Haven't seen a single team who knows how to game plan for Walter Clayton Jr. So many fun NBA comparisons for him. People say Steph Curry kind of moves like Damian Lillard with some of that athleticism. He's just a lot of fun to watch. So for the sake of him being fun, and then they have so much talent on that team. So I'm gonna roll with Florida as well. But I think the physicality of the two teams matches up, and I thought that was the case for Duke, and Houston prevailed. So I think if Houston can make it an ugly game like it was against Duke, where low scoring, a lot of turnovers, a lot of missed shots, that plays into Houston's favor. But I am going to go with Florida.
Well, on the women's side, UConn won yesterday, so Missouri women's basketball, I think, can really turn the page to the new era. So we're going to look ahead to that with Killian Wright on the second half of the show. But for now, thank you, Michael Chase, for your time. Now joined by Killian Wright, women's basketball writer here at Missouri Tigers on SI, to talk about this women's basketball team here at Missouri. Killian, we were just talking about in the last segment of the show, Paige Becker's UConn winning this Final Four here. I mean, before we get into Missouri, just what were your thoughts on the Into That women's tournament?
It's impressive, not only from UConn, but from Paige specifically. Truly kind of went under the radar in the past couple of years after all the Caitlin and the Angel stuff. But I mean, people forget just a few years ago, Paige was kind of the one. And I think she maybe helped remind some people of her status in the college basketball scene. And then in turn, now the WNBA draft scene, capping off her career with the coveted championship she really needed. But it was incredible.
Yeah, I think the exciting thing about women's basketball these past few years, and a big part of its rise, is obviously these are some really talented players in the sport over these past few seasons. There's still from that era that are going to stick around. But on top of that, too, is just the personalities that makes this sport so interesting to follow. I mean, to have the rivalry of, I mean, anytime anybody South Carolina is going up against, to have Kim Mulkey in the sport right now and have her with more spotlight on her, and the rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese that went on, and overall that LSU team with so many characters. And so I think that's what's so great about the attention that the sport is getting now, to put a spotlight on that. And so that's why with Missouri women's basketball, I'm excited to see what this program can do with Kellie Harper to put some attention on this program. And I mean, obviously some of the players they have returning, but interested to see who they can add there and have some real pool in the transfer portal for the first time. But before we get to that, just want to talk to you about Kellie Harper. Spent the last year away from coaching as an analyst on that SEC network. She has a very deep resume outside of that. Spent 2019 to 2024 at Tennessee, made 2 Sweet 16s there. 2013 and 2019 at Missouri State, also had a stop at North Carolina State before that. So proven, I think my main takeaway from the hire was that Missouri wasn't looking to make a high risk, high reward hire. Not to say that the ceiling isn't high with Kellie Harper. And obviously it was a top selection. It was definitely an investment from Laird Beach in this athletic department, but they were looking for somebody that they could be confident in, that would have a low floor in season number 1. So that was my main thoughts on. What were your kind of takeaways from this hire?
Well, just to put it bluntly, Kellie Harper was one of the better floor raisers available in the entire landscape, as far as realistic targets for Mizzou go. She's made the she's made the playoffs at every stop she's gone to. NCAA tournament, all 4 stints. Specifically, her last 4 years with Tennessee, made it each year. Really impressive, and something that for a program who hasn't made it to the tournament in a long time now, that's probably what you're looking for. If you're Missouri, you're looking for that. Maybe not as you mentioned, maybe not the slam dunk coach who is going to immediately elevate you to, hey, Elite Eight. Is Elite Eight in talks? Probably not, but Kellie Harper will get you back in that postseason scene and maybe bridge the gap to the Tigers' next spot and rising to contention. It's been a rough patch, to just putting it how it is. It's been a rough patch for Missouri women's basketball. Harper marks the start of an era where very clearly they're looking to compete. As you know, we were both at the presser. They're looking to win now. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by winning, but both Harper and Moon Choi mentioned immediately winning next year as a goal. Obviously, Choi mentioned banners. We'll see where that comes from. But it's certainly in the question for this team to be a fun, competitive team next year in the SEC. I'd be shocked if they finished towards the bottom. You don't see that very often from Kellie Harper teams. Just looking through her career, the last time she was significantly under 500 was her second year coaching at Western Carolina. Ever since then, her lowest winning percentage season was a 14 and 17 year at NC State all the way back in 2011. So this is someone who just quite frankly isn't very used to losing to a certain extent. And that's what the Tigers need.
I love what you said of what exactly they mean by winning. Like what is that expectation? I think the bar is very low at least for the program's last few years of expectations. And it'll be interesting to see, I mean, just in general with the coaching scene, how the transfer portal continues to make the job of a head coach different and the expectations for them different, because there's a lot less of a leash. But also with that is the ability to rebuild a program very quickly. So we'll see where that ends up going. But obviously, it's not like Kellie Harper has too much of recent history to live up to. So that said, I agree with a lot of what you said there. When you look at this team, she kept on saying that she's really confident in this core group of returners. So I guess before we get to that and kind of what the roster looks like, can you just tell us this? You just started reporting on this team for MissouriOnSI, but you covered this team all season long this past year. Before we get to looking ahead to this next year, just what was this past season like for the team in the last year of Robin Pinchton?
In the last year of the Pinchton era, it's a little weird because, to be quite honest, a lot of the stuff that happened last year is not going to overly matter in the upcoming season. You're looking at a big roster turnover. There's still 7 scholarship spots available, I believe, on the roster. So a lot of what you saw, you can take it with a grain of salt. Last year, as far as the bad goes, I guess we can start with the bad because overall it lines up with the record. Struggled in the playmaking department, didn't quite have a true point guard to set up scores. And it showed. Avery Kroenke led the team with 3 assists per game, a spot starter, a bit of a combo guard, but I'm not sure her play warrants being able to consistently start on a competitive SEC team. There are a lot of good ball handlers throughout the team, but as far as pure playmaking goes, you need a true table setter in this league who can really slow things down is the name of the game in the current women's basketball scene. You need someone who can do that. Alongside more offensive struggles, getting to the rim was a serious issue. Really, all season long, it felt like Grace Slaughter and Lanaya Randall were the only threats to really get to the rim. And Lanaya Randall will be gone. Grace Slaughter will be rising into her junior year, but even Slaughter, oftentimes mentioned in post-game pressers by Pinchton that you want to see her be a little more aggressive. A lot of times Slaughter would drive and she'd be the one to kind of take charge and be like, all right, we need a bucket, guys. But you would see her stop in that 7-8 foot range a lot and settle for the post hook or the fade when really you got to get all the way to the rim. And that all those piled together kind of led to the Tigers' lack of free throw rate, which I think was also the primary struggle of their offense. Tied for 3rd last in the SEC in free throw attempts per game. And it's hard to win if you're not shooting a lot of free throws. I know there's some differing opinions in the world of basketball right now on free throws, but the reality is you kind of need them.
So when you look ahead at this team for next year, don't need to spend too much time on targets. He had a good video on that this past weekend, looking at some of the targets for this team. And there's obviously a lot of connections to this coaching staff that Kellie Harper has assembled. But I mean, you mentioned kind of their weaknesses there. So what do you think are the biggest needs in this transfer portal cycle?
The biggest needs right now, it would have to be, obviously, as I mentioned, the playmaking department was lacking. So you need a point guard. But arguably even more so, you need a big. The women's side of the SEC is the same as the men's side. It's physical. It's tough. It's large. There's a lot of big bodies out there that you got to compete with. And right now, the Missouri big chart, depth chart, is it's lacking a little bit. Not only in terms of just bodies to throw out there, but in terms of experience and minutes. Right now, your starting front court from last season, Angelique Ngala-Kalande and Lanaya Randall, who both led the team in blocks, given it was both under 1 per game, but they led the team in blocks. And they were the best rebounders on the team. They're both gone. They graduated. So that leaves your starting center as of now would project to either be Hannah Linthicum, who, to be honest, really struggles defensively when playing the 5. A little bit of a thinner frame, can't quite hold up against post scores, and also is not exactly the most mobile on defense. And then Tiana Heron, who has the potential to be really good. She was a 4-star recruit out of high school, but obviously dealt with some of that open heart surgery a couple years back and is still getting back into the swing of things in terms of honestly just basketball shape. I mean, that's a lot to go through. So to expect her to be at full strength even now after 2 years later, it might be too much to ask, but one of those players, no matter what, it will probably be in the rotation next year. Given that, though, I would be very surprised if Missouri doesn't target a big in the portal to come in and start at the 5.
And then looking at this roster, I mean, you mentioned some of their weaknesses, but I mean, would you still say, I mean, Grace Sauter and Ashton Judd, at least, do you think they have a role on next year's team as important starters as they've been the last 2 years?
Yes. I think for the ideal path for this team would be to have Grace Slaughter as your best player. Slaughter really has she has one of the higher potentials in scores among the SEC. She's really good, to put it simply. Last year, her volume was a little lower, which is something Pinchton was on her a lot about. Like, hey, Grace, you got to shoot more. You're our best player. We need you out there. In the last 14 games of the season, which were all SEC games, she shot at least 10 shots and 4 threes in all but one game, which is heading in the right trajectory compared to where she was earlier in the season, when she would have multiple games of single-digit shot attempts. She turned it around, and it felt like she started to hit her stride more as the season went along. And a Slaughter that's aggressive and confident in her game, that's going to be hard to stop. She was one of the most efficient players in the SEC last year. Well, one of 2 players to average 15 a game on at least 45 and 45 splits. If you move that up to 48 in the field goal percentage, she's the only one. And she will be a junior next year. That's impressive stuff. She's a well-rounded scorer. Aside from that 0 to 3 foot range, she can score from just about anywhere. So she'll be a building block of the team next year, probably the building block, unless a big transfer portal target is landed. But Slaughter for sure will be hopefully the leader of the team next year. As far as Judd started off a little shaky in the beginning of the year. It seemed like the team was a little unsure of what they wanted her role to be. And it bounced around a little bit. Judd came off the bench for a couple games. I think decided that probably wasn't the best for her. And then she started some games. And as far as pure scoring, she was probably the 3rd best scorer on the team last year and is shaping up to be the 2nd best scorer on the team next year. You can count on her to create a lot of jump shots. She's a good off the ball relocator. She can play off of other players, which is why I think getting a point guard would really help Ashton Judd specifically, honestly. And she's arguably the best pull-up jump shooter on the team. So both Slaughter and Judd should be focal points of the offense next year.
Interesting to hear on those two. And when you look ahead to this next year's team, and it's obviously difficult without having the idea of the personnel really, but is there anything you're sort of expecting out of a Kellie Harper coach team as far as play style? And I know this was your question to her at her press conference.
Yeah. And she gave me a little bit to work with that honestly has some overlap with the team of last year. Last year, the team was overall good defensively, respectively to their record. Finished 3rd to last in the SEC in record, I believe, tied 3rd to last, or around that ballpark. But we're 9th in points allowed. That's not too bad, all things considered. And the identity of the team from last year, you had backups like Nia Wilson and Demilah Brown, who were really 90-foot defenders. They'll hound ball handlers a lot. And then Lanaya Randall, who anyone who was watching the games can tell you was just a ball of fire, just out there screaming after every possession. And it's kind of funny. It's unfortunate those 3 will be gone next year because they seem like the perfect fit for the Kellie Harper identity. Because I believe she said, we're going to be in here working. If you don't want to work, you can go ahead and get out. It's something along the lines of that, which that got a good laugh out of me. It reminded me of a little bit of Dan Campbell stuff. But I'm excited to see what this sort of team looks like. Just a real put your nose down, go to work, just nonstop. I think it can unleash maybe a sort of an overall team identity that hopefully, Harper can instill, rather than Pinchton last year was able to just bring in a few players with that identity. And maybe that wasn't Pinchton's thing, but this is kind of Harper's thing. She's going to make the girls go 100 miles an hour all the time. You're going to have intense games. You're going to have physical games. It's going to be emotional. But I think that's a really good identity for a team who's trying to make that jump from at the bottom of the conference to that mid-tier of the conference. I think that's one of the more effective ways to do it.
There was definitely a lot of, as expected, coach speak in Kellie's introductory press conference, but there was also, you could tell a little bit of her coaching style coming through with that felt authentic of what you mentioned. She talked so much, what I found most interesting about her press conference, of taking that year away from coaching and wanting to only go back if she could find a school that fit exactly what she was looking for. And obviously when you have the resume that she did, you can be selective like that. And learning in that year away, just realizing what she appreciates about coaching and the passion she has for it. So I think at the very least, just an infusion of character into this team. And again, at the very least, at the start of the season, this team will have probably the most excitement around it has in quite some time. Any final thoughts, Killian, on this team before we wrap it up?
I mean, you kind of summed it up. There's a lot to be excited about for the upcoming season and for the offseason, honestly. Portal tracker we've got here going on, so we'll keep you updated with that. But this is definitely the most buzz around the team that I've heard of in a while. I've got friends back at home in Kansas City talking about this who are barely Missouri fans. They're talking about it. So there's some buzz around the team, and it's warranted too. Harper's press conference was notable. There's some expectations that are coming with the team, and I think it's reasonable to expect this team to be a fun and competitive team next year. So it'll be interesting to see how the roster is rounded out. But it seems like no matter what, you can kind of tell what the identity of the team is going to be.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. We hope you appreciated it and hope you tune into the rest of our coverage. Also on the podcast this week, later in the week, we'll be having on draft analyst Tyler Brook to talk about Missouri's draft prospects. We'll be looking ahead to the Missouri gymnastics team in the semifinals for the NCAA tournament as well. So a lot of exciting stuff going on here. Again, check out the rest of our coverage, including for women's basketball now at Missouri Tigers on SI.